Everyone is welcome here. Thank you all for showing up. Just to go over the program first, I'm going to hand over to Prof. van der Linde, our Dean, to do a word of welcome for the law faculty. And then Prof. Fua, our chairholder, is going to say a few words. And then Mr. George Nyombanga is going to introduce our speaker. So without further ado, Prof. van der Linde, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Leandre. Dear guests and students and very special guests, and one of the tasks of a dean is always to welcome people, and invariably I'm not the only person who welcomes you, so you'll be 3 times welcome today by the time we've finished. But I want to, on behalf of the faculty, thank you for being here. Thank you to our esteemed speaker, Ms Danjelle Midgley. Thank you to Professor Fua, the incumbent of the CLES chair, and also to all of you for being here. Undergrad students, postgraduate students, postdoctoral fellows. The faculty is very privileged to have one of the SACHI chairs in the university. I think the university used to have 7, but now we recently got 2 more. So we've got 9 SACHI chairs at the university, and CLES is one of the Tier 1 chairs. Tier 1 basically means that the incumbent of the chair enjoys international recognition already. So it's a very prestigious endeavor for the faculty. We are very proud of this. The whole SACHI Chair initiative started way back in 2006 when the National Research Foundation initiated this concept as a way of strengthening and improving research and innovation capacity of public universities. So the whole idea is that these chairs will produce high-quality postgraduate students, will produce research and innovation, and will create basically research career pathways in the industry. So it's hugely important, and it is, as I say, very prestigious. So Professor Oliver Fua was, it's just about a year ago when you were permanently appointed for a 5-year period into this chair. Before that, he acted as the interim chairholder, but it is basically now just the anniversary. Did you have a party?
Not yet.
Oh, okay, so it was
5 years ago.
Okay, but maybe we can have like prestige lectures.
Yeah.
So this is the 6th annual prestige lecture, and I would really just like to welcome all of you. And we're looking forward to your topic. I think, well, I can always say I'm getting old, but the older one gets, the more you realize that, you know, being a lawyer is not only about litigation. There's so much more, and litigation has certain specific limits. So I'm particularly looking forward to this address this afternoon, just highlighting some other ways in which lawyers can contribute to environmental justice. I would also just like to note the apology on behalf of Professor Germarie Viljoen, the Deputy Dean for Research, Innovation, Community Engagement and Postgraduate Studies, or RICEP as we call it. She would have loved to be here, but she's standing in for me, attending another meeting, speaking of which I also have another meeting, so I might have to excuse myself before the end of the lecture, but I'm trying to stretch it. So thank you. Over to Professor Oliver Fua.
Thanks very much, Prof. Kathleen. The Executive Dean of the Faculty of Law, Prof. Kathleen van der Linde, want to thank you very much for availing yourself to open our 6th prestige lecture this year. And we also want to take the opportunity to welcome you to Port. I think I did so at the end of last year when we were appointed Dean, and also at the beginning of this year. And we are looking forward to your leadership, especially in terms of steering the faculty towards the 3 core areas of business of the university as we aspire to be a university of excellence, which is recognized not only at the African regional level, but also at the international level in terms of the contributions we can make in terms of teaching, research, and community engagement. I also want to take the opportunity to thank our distinguished guest, Ms Danjelle Midgley, for making the time to come to Potchefstroom. Potchefstroom is usually not a place which is very attractive to a lot of scholars because it is considered to be in a rural province, and we are often told that for us to be able to attract scholars and practitioners like yourself, we should take some of our activities to Cape Town and Stellenbosch. So we are very happy that you left the Republic of Cape Town and came up to Potch to deliver this prestige lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's an honor for me to welcome you to the 6th annual prestige lecture, which is organized by the NRF South African Research Chair in Cities, Law and Environmental Sustainability. We want to thank those of you who have traveled far and those of you who are coming from near, who have been able to honor our invitation by joining us this afternoon to listen to, I promise you, what will be a very interesting speech that will be delivered by Ms Danjelle Midgley. No pressure on you, but I know that with your vast experience in the area of environmental law and policy, and with litigation experience of more than a decade, you will surely be able to live up to what the audience expects. So we want to thank you again once more for availing yourself to the lecture, and for those of you who have been part of our events in the past, I think that it is common knowledge that the South African Research Chair in Cities, Law and Environmental Sustainability is a Tier 1 Chair of the Faculty of Law, and a Tier 1 NRF Chair, which is housed by the Faculty of Law, Northwest University in Potchefstroom. I think the Dean alluded to that already, and we form part of the research unit of the Faculty of Law, which centers around issues of law, justice, and sustainability. And this chair was established in 2019 by our pioneering chair, Professor Annette du Plessis, who was able to work very hard with the cohort of students that we had at that time, and was able to ensure that at the end of the first cycle of funding, the chair was upgraded from a Tier 2 chair to a Tier 1 chair, and I was able to take over the reins when she left for Stellenbosch in 2023, and served as interim chair for almost a year and a half. And at the beginning of last year, the NRF confirmed me as a chair, and I'm expected to lead the chair, obviously, within the next 5 years of funding, and hopefully beyond that. CLES is a research institution that is devoted to legal scholarship and to the development of skills, legal skills that are needed to be able to promote sustainable urban development in South Africa and beyond. And to this end, we have a number of full-time postgraduate students. All our students are full-time students. In the area of working on the intersecting areas of law, governance, urban development, and environmental sustainability. We have a big cohort which we are expanding. At the moment, we have 4 LLM students. I think we have 6 PhD candidates and 3 postdoctoral fellows. We are in the process of getting the 4th postdoctoral fellow who will hopefully join us before the end of June. And we are also assisted by Dr. Lawrence Erasmus, who is a researcher at the chair and also our administrator. And we've sent out call for applications for next year. And we want to nominate the brightest amongst those of you who are seated here who are not yet members of CLES, even if you don't come from a strictly speaking law background, to be able to join us. If you have the grades that are required, I think age is no longer an issue. The NRF has relaxed that a bit, so you can be a Madala and still qualify for it if your grades are very good and you have a very good topic. So we sent out a call for applications, and that will close on the 18th of this month. And if you qualify, you should be able to apply. Check our social media platforms. The requirements are not very tough, even though we try to get the best. You must have at least a 65%. You must have at least 65% for your dissertation, LLB dissertation or LLM dissertation or master's dissertation. And also for a bachelor's degree or master's degree, you should have earned an average of at least 65% for the qualification. And if you meet those requirements, you just need to write a proposal of about 2, at most 4 pages, and we can always guide you in terms of what we think can easily attract a bursary for you. So if you need more information in relation to that, you can contact any of us during the break or the coffee break that we are going to have at the end of Ms. Danjelle's presentation. Permit me also indicate that the annual Prestige Lecture is one of the activities that we have at the chair, and we've hosted Prestige Lecture since 2021, and that was initiated by Professor Anne. And the first lecture that we had was delivered virtually online by Ms. Kobe Brand, who is CLES Africa Regional Director, and since then we've had one every year. The one of last year was delivered by Dr. Dalia Ago on the 21st of May, and it's almost a year now, and her lecture was on the topic, the post-pandemic city, balancing urban redevelopment, gentrification, and sustainability. The title of today's lecture is Promoting Environmental Justice, Legal Advocacy, and the Role of Lawyers Beyond the Courtroom. We believe that the presentation of Danjelle, like I indicated earlier, will capture your interest and the interest of many beyond the academic space because of the nature of the topic and the fact that environmental injustices prevail in South Africa and are even exacerbated 30 years after the adoption of the Constitution. I want to thank Ms. Viande Robertson and her team for making it possible for us to gather here today. I think that without all the hard work that went behind the scenes, this would not have come to fruition. So thank you very much for the work that you've done to make this event a success. Without much ado, allow me to call on stage Mr. George Nyambonga to introduce our guest speaker, and I hope that you will enjoy her presentation and be able to engage with her during the question and answer session. Thanks very much.
Greetings, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce our guest lecturer for the 6th annual Prestige Lecture. So, as you've been informed earlier, her name is Danjelle Midgley. She began her journey with a Bachelor of Music from the University of Cape Town before heeding to the call to pursue a Bachelor's of Laws in the same institution. She would later transition to pursue a Master of Laws at the University of Cape Town, finalizing her research with groundbreaking research on biodiversity offsets. She will later take a break from the academy to pursue legal practice, where she did articling at Kulilan and Associates, which is a specialist environmental law firm situated in Cape Town. After that, she will transition to the Center for Environmental Rights under the Activist Support and Training Program, and also environmental litigation for a period of 10 years. During these 10 years, she did many activities, notably training in major workshops on a range of constitutional and environmental law related issues. Our brief chat explained that she loves research. It's like her forte, if that is the correct word, where she specifically engages on matters of environmental law, particularly pertaining to issues affecting communities. More importantly, she also supports South African-based environmental justice activism. And also, occasionally, she stands on business when it comes to being a parliament liaison personnel and thought leader in environmental law developments. It looks like she never forgot about academia, because as we are speaking, she is currently pursuing her Doctor of Philosophy in law, with her focus of study being strengthening climate litigation strategies in South Africa. For the past 4 months, she has spent time at the University of Amsterdam as a visiting research fellow, researching on exploring climate litigation developments in Europe. Rather than that, of course, every practitioner has that one case that is so close to her heart. She happened to have been one of the defense attorneys in the case of Amapondo communities in the Wild Coast, where she successfully led in the opposition for the construction of a highway in their land. Esteemed and upcoming scholars, please put a round of applause for our speaker, Danjelle Midgley.
Thank you so much and welcome everybody. I feel just delighted to be here and so honored, and thank you for my quadruple welcome. I've prepared a lot of slides, but there's not a lot of words or law on them. It's mainly just photos. So I'm very pleased to see the profs moving over here so they can see some of my snapshots. So I'm Danjelle Midgley, and I've been well introduced. I've had a very interesting legal journey that's brought me to be so honored to be able to present this lecture to you today. And I'm so pleased to hear that there are students from all levels, and I believe even some state officials from the municipality, and hopefully some people from other faculties as well, because my presentation, although it's centered in law, and I think throughout the next hour you will just deeply know how much of a law nerd I am and how much I love thinking about law and democracy and parliament and environmental law. It's actually got so many more influences on our life outside of law. So I'm going to just move over here now, so please let me know if you're struggling to see me at all. Is that changing for you? No, I've got to change here as well, I think. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about legal advocacy and environmental justice. And I know that when I was doing my LLB, I thought that litigation was the end goal for lawyers. I don't come from a legal family, and you tend to think that what attorneys do is go to court. And that has been a big, important part of my life, and it's a very powerful tool for making a change in our society, in our country. But actually, my job for the last 7 years has been much more focused on advocacy. Advocacy is a very broad word that can describe a whole lot of different activities and tools and mechanisms, and I'm going to take you through a few of the ones that I use in my work. But I was really struck by a quote by a famous English judge that said, advocacy is the art of persuasion through communication. And so I'm here to persuade and to communicate some of the tools that really excite me in my pursuit for environmental justice, and thinking about the contribution that we can all make as scholars and practitioners in law and in other fields as well. So I work at an NGO. It's a law clinic. It's called the Center for Environmental Rights. We call it the CER as well. And we like to describe ourselves as activist lawyers who use litigation and advocacy to advance environmental rights. And typically our clients are civil society organizations, community-based organizations, and activists, and the people who bear the burden of environmental injustice in this country. So we use litigation and advocacy and activist support and training to advance our vision of a more equal society, free of fossil fuels, in which environmental and climate justice is realized and all people and the planet flourish. Very ambitious, but that's what our Constitution allows us to do. Part of our work at the Center for Environmental Rights is also focused on building the movement and thinking about alliances and networks. And so we are part of an alliance that's called the Life After Coal, or LAC. And it's been around, we celebrated 10 years of this alliance. And it's an alliance between 3 organizations, the Center for Environmental Rights, Groundwork, and EarthLife Africa. And as you can see in the name, it aims to discourage the development of new coal-fired power stations, and a lot of our work has been focused on challenging coal-fire mines and power stations. So at the CR, we've got 4 programs. We've got a pollution and climate change team, corporate accountability and transparency, we have a mining team, and then I work in the activist support and training program. And I would say we are certainly not your average lawyers, in that we really feel deeply about our cause and our clients, and we don't distance ourselves from the matters that we are involved in. We are passionate about succeeding for our clients and feel very committed to that cause as well. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what led me to be here. And I think I had quite an unusual legal journey. But after my master's, I joined Cullinan and Associates. And for 4 or 5 years, I worked on a case which really was very meaningful for me and really changed how I thought about what the role of the law is, and also what the role of lawyers are. So I worked in the Xolo-Beni region in the northern Eastern Cape. I'm not sure if anybody here is from the Wild Coast region. It's an absolutely exquisite area. And for many years, I was responsible for driving to the Komkhulu, which is the traditional court. And this is where various decisions are taken under customary law structures. And I would report to the leaders. I would explain what's happening in the case. We would discuss strategy. We would have to make resolutions. And apart from my part of each one of these court sittings, there were many other matters being heard. And so I had the privilege of learning customary law from sitting in the Komkhulu and hearing the other disputes, the other issues about land, about succession. And it was just an amazing experience to think there are so many forums out there in which decisions about land and environment and pollution and climate change are being taken. And there's so many strategies that different people use. That's the Komkhulu, and that's the Baki that I often had to drive through very dodgy roads. Actually, there weren't many roads at all to get there. I was very inspired by my director, Cormac. You can see him being instructed by our clients there. He's sitting on the road and he's drafting an affidavit. And one of the leaders who is involved in the case, Mashona Wetu, he's instructing my colleague over here in one of the court hearings in this matter. Anyway, this was just an incredible experience for me to realize that I think I'm very much drawn to the civil society, the public benefit, the public interest type of legal litigation and advocacy. And that led me to join the Center for Environmental Rights, where I've been since 2019. So that's some of my team over there. I'm so interested to be in the activist support and training program because it actually allows a lot more creativity and flexibility in thinking about what tools and mechanisms we can use to advance environmental justice. So the AS&T, Activist Support and Training Program, supports and empowers activists, communities, and organizations around South Africa who are affected by environmental and climate injustice. And we provide practical and empowering tools to support activists through training, enforcing compliance with environmental and other laws, and also securing and designing environmental activist spaces. Even though it took me 10 years to recover from my master's, I'm back studying at UCT. I'm doing my PhD. My supervisor, his name is Dr. Melanie Merkart, and she's a very well-respected climate litigation scholar. And so I'm investigating what is climate justice litigation and what are some strategies that can advance climate justice. So to move on a little bit to South Africa's environmental law regime, which I think many of you are already very familiar with. For all South Africa's challenges and faults, I must say I'm very proud to be an environmental lawyer in South Africa. I actually think that our constitutional right and our legal regime is beautiful and intricate and complex, but it provides so much scope for making a really meaningful difference. So I'll take you through a little bit about what I'm talking about there. Much of the work that we do at the CR centers around our constitutional right, which says everyone has the right to an environment that is not harmful to their health and well-being, or well-being. And actually, I think we've focused heavily on the health aspect of this constitutional right in most of our litigation, but the word well-being has a very special meaning, and I'm going to talk to you about a project I've been working on, which is trying to give content and some meaning to what is well-being, in addition to all the health impacts that pollution affects us. Well-being has a very special meaning and role to play. We all know the first part of the right, it's our human right, and the second part says everyone has the right to have the environment protected for the benefit of future and present generations through reasonable legislative and other measures that prevent pollution and ecological degradation, promote conservation, and secure ecologically sustainable development and use of natural resources while promoting justifiable economic and social development. So I mentioned this well-being aspect, and I think well-being represents this complex combination of a person's physical, mental, emotional, psychological, and social health factors. And I think it's quite beautiful that we've got a constitutional right that is strongly linked to happiness and life satisfaction. So in short, well-being can be described as how you feel about yourself and your life. And it's got very important cultural and spiritual dimensions to it as well. I do a lot of teaching about environmental law, and we try and simplify this complex legal regime where we explain how Section 24 of the Constitution is the roots. It absorbs from the soil the nutrients, and it feeds the trunk of this giant stem of this beautiful tree. And the stem is the National Environmental Management Act. That's our NEMA. The roots feed the stem, and the branches of the tree represent all of our specific environmental management acts. Those are the ones that regulate coastal biodiversity, heritage, and the new one from last year, Climate Change Act, as long as with the Waste Act and the Protected Areas Act as well. So that's how I think about the structure of environmental law. And we always go back to the Constitution when we talk about environmental rights. And you'll see in this project I'm going to take you through later, even when we talk about a particular very technical regulation being violated or transgressed, it's important to communicate that as a violation of your constitutional right as well. So when we talk about that second part of the constitutional right, it says everybody has the right to have laws made which achieve certain goals. And I actually think the fact that NEMA's preamble contains a very poignant preamble, which I'm going to read to you a little bit about, because it introduces the concept of environmental justice. So I know we lawyers, we look at laws all the time, but I always just skip past the preamble, and every now and then, maybe once a year, go and read your preambles again, because it's just a beautiful framing for these laws, and it can just add a dimension that maybe you didn't recognize when you went straight to that section you were looking at. So the preamble to NEMA says this: whereas many inhabitants of South Africa live in an environment that is harmful to their health and well-being, everyone has the right to an environment that is not harmful to health or well-being. The state must protect, respect, promote, and fulfill the social, economic, and environmental rights of everyone, and strive to meet the basic needs of previously disadvantaged communities. Inequalities in the distribution of wealth and resources and the resultant poverty are among the important causes, as well as the results of environmentally harmful practices. So you can see this is starting to introduce the concept of environmental justice. And in addition, the preamble even contains what I think is such a vote of confidence for people interested in being in the civil society sector, because it says, it is desirable that the law should be enforced by the state and that the law should facilitate the enforcement of environmental laws by civil society. So the drafters of this law, this constitutional law, recognize that it's not just up to officials who are going to be involved in the compliance of these laws, but civil society. And I think scholars and academics and researchers have a role equally to play. In fact, civil society, much of our work is shaped by the research and the outputs that you generate. So the title of my talk is about environmental justice and what advocacy strategies we can use to advance it. And NEMA section 2.4c in the principles section gives us a beautiful definition of environmental justice. In fact, it's not just a definition, it's an imperative, it's an instruction, or it's an inspiration. It says, environmental justice must be pursued so that adverse environmental impacts shall not be distributed in a manner as to unfairly discriminate against any person, particularly vulnerable and disadvantaged persons. So environmental justice seeks to address the inequitable distribution of environmental burdens, such as pollution or toxic waste, which often disproportionately impact low-income and marginalized communities. In my own PhD research, it's on climate justice, and that is also looking into who's responsible for climate change and who actually bears the burden of the impacts of climate change. And that can be at a country level, a corporation level, an individual level. It can have a gendered aspect to it, but it's recognizing that pollution and environmental degradation affects different people differently. And our law provides some tools that we can try and use to address that inequality. I'm a firm believer that the law is not just for lawyers, and I've worked very hard to think and to speak about law in a way that makes it practical and understandable and useful for non-lawyers. And even though I've trained so hard to speak about law in a simple way, and now I'm trying to write in an academic sense for my PhD research, I think I'm going to retain some of that activist fire and try and keep it simple. So our laws provide many opportunities and mechanisms for non-lawyers to use. And that's my role in the activist support and training. I'm trying to make environmental law work for the communities. And I'm trying to think about what tools do we have at our disposal to bring law to life for people exposed to environmental injustice. And how can we, as lawyers and scholars, use the law to advance environmental rights, to enforce compliance with laws, like it said in the NEMA preamble, hold polluters accountable, and improve government decision-making, because we all want to promote sustainable development. So I'm going to introduce you to some of our clients, and we don't always call the people we work with clients because often we consider them our partners, and many of them are actually from the Northwest. This is Madiklokwe near Marikana and quite close regions. So I've spent the last 7 years at CR working closely with activists and communities and organizations who experience daily the impacts of pollution. And many of my clients and of my organization's partners live near mines or other polluting industries. And the reason that they have approached the CER is because their constitutional right to a harmful environment, well, to their constitutional right to an environment that's not harmful has been violated. So in thinking about how to prepare for this lecture, I spoke to many of my clients and the partners that we work with and asked what they think the role of an environmental justice lawyer is. And I'm going to take you through a few examples of what answers they gave me and how we are trying to make those strategies real. Just some other photos. You can see this is Fosman Emalahleni, and some of my clients live in the houses on the far right, and it's a coal mine on the left, and you can just see the toxic leachate, which often floods their houses. So these might sound very simple and obvious, but these are the tools that we have at our disposal. And when I say training, it's not just teaching. Obviously, teaching is a huge part of it, but it's also allowing people to become information hubs themselves in their communities, a sort of train-the-trainer approach to thinking about environmental law. And my colleague here mentioned that I spend a day or two a week monitoring Parliament and understanding how Parliament works, monitoring what's going on in the parliamentary portfolio committees, And then, very importantly, identifying when there are opportunities for us to get involved in an amendment, when there's an opportunity for people to be involved in commenting on draft laws. The movement building aspect is a very important aspect of environmental justice as well, because people can feel very isolated fighting a battle in one region when they don't realize that communities across the country are experiencing similar issues and have great strategies that they can share. So climate change and environmental injustice, there's only so much we can do in a courtroom. These are societal issues, and it requires social movements to also make their voices heard. Of course, where you come in is the research and expertise and the technical and scientific and academic support that we provide. And sometimes I feel like we at CR are the sort of mediator explaining this technical or scientific or academic literature, making it either persuasive to a judge or explaining to the communities where the research has been conducted, what is it going to be used for? How can we ethically and respectfully speak to communities where there's research being done and make their lives better as well? We also use media and art a lot. The courtroom is one forum for making change, but the media is a very powerful one as well, and it's something that we've engaged with a lot. And then some other creative legal tools and platforms, which I'm always very excited about to talk about because I love them and they look great. And of course, I think it's quite obvious that often successful campaigns use all of these strategies together. And of course, when all else fails, we can still go to court and compel the change that is required. But often a successful campaign means that we don't have to go to court. And a lot of these other strategies, the community is at the heart and the forefront of these strategies, whereas courtrooms can be disempowering to community clients when they hand over the challenge to lawyers and judges. So if I speak about some of the training that we do, I'm in the activist support and training program, and a big highlight of my year, and I think this year's our 9th year, is running a course called Rights and Remedies. And this is a course which provides intensive training for environmental justice activists from all over South Africa. We held our 8th edition last year, and it focuses on practical training outcomes. That's last year's cohort, just amazing people, and we've now trained over 113 of them. And it provides participants with a range of skills to facilitate engagement with government and industry, including the use of statutory remedies. And sometimes that means just perfecting how to write a really powerful letter or to object to a project that they're not happy with, but also to report environmental violations and to use access to information laws. So as part of R&R, Rights and Remedies, we have a very holistic approach to environmental activism. And our curriculum covers media and storytelling and digital activism, the right to water, getting familiar with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, something that makes me just so happy is when I hear communities speaking about environmental rights and feeling that they apply and that they must be claimed. So we have a whole day of getting familiar with the Constitution and understanding how to use those rights. We have an air pollution session, extensive mining in the environment, which includes social and labor plans and the local economic development aspects of those. We've started to do training on waste and local government. The access to information right is extremely important for activists. The right to protest and bail. And South Africa is currently ramping up its oil and gas industry, and so this is a big aspect of our training at the moment, as well as strengthening the organizations in community movements as well. So I mentioned we've trained over 100 people through Rights and Remedies, and this group now who've all gone through Rights and Remedies, they automatically become part of the Rights and Remedies alumni, and that's another example of this networking and alliance building that we're trying to do, the movement building, the bringing activists together. So it aims to support the work of the alumni, to facilitate communication and networking, and to provide mentorship opportunities, and to support all of the projects that the alumni go on to do. I like speaking at universities, and it does make me a bit nervous because I think it was 2018, a few of my colleagues spoke at a summer school at UCT, and they were speaking about the operations of a mine on the west coast, and they were describing both the environmental impact of this mine, which was devastating to the coastline and the biodiversity. And then a few months later, we were all in the office and we were served with papers in a defamation suit. And this was a very new area of law for us. And we didn't set out to change the law about defamation, but I'm not sure if you've heard about a SLAP suit. It stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. And we could, through having to defend this defamation action, which the mine brought against my colleagues, we could now establish that in South African law, there's a defense. If you raise the SLAP defense, these mines didn't know what they had going when they sued my colleagues, because it resulted in a huge campaign and a huge network and alliance, which we called the Asino Loyiko campaign. And it was a collaborative effort amongst civil society aimed at discouraging the use of litigation to silence and intimidate activism. So that's why I enjoy speaking about this case at universities, because then the chilling effect hasn't worked. But another example of an alliance and a network. And I spoke to you about our Life After Coal work that we do as well. Sorry, this is the Asino Loyiko network and alliance. And this is the Life After Coal Alliance. So the training is not just about how does a law work or what are the mechanisms that communities should use. We also are involved in bringing Parliament to communities. I mentioned how we're supporting communities being involved in law reform. And I do a lot of training on how to access information using PIA and provide guidance on public participation processes, often in the environmental impact assessment process. And then also some internal compliance and enforcement mechanisms for communities to use. An example of that would be, for instance, if there's an EIA being conducted and the behavior of the assessment practitioner has violated some aspects of the regulations, then there's a complaint mechanism that communities can use. These are just some examples of the types of workshops we do under our training. This was a community workshop where we knew that the National Parliament was holding a hearing in the Vaal area, and they were going to be asking the community for input on the Upstream Petroleum Resources Development Bill. And this is another example of training I've done about how to access information using PIA. So we don't only train communities. We are, at least, I would say, 30 lawyers at the Centre for Environmental Rights. We have an office in Cape Town and Joburg, and we are sometimes called to Parliament to provide some training to members of Parliament on aspects of environmental law. And we're very involved in law reform and monitoring what's going on in Parliament. And there are lots of mechanisms that are really interesting in Parliament. It's not just listening to the committees, but you can submit questions to be asked to the ministers. You can attend public participation processes. There's colloquiums. And it's very interesting. I recommend everybody tune in to the parliamentary. Ever since COVID, they've been online. And it's really interesting to see this is the nuts and bolts of how our democracy works. Just an example of where we are addressing Parliament's Select Committee in response to a call for comments on the Upstream Petroleum Resources Development Bill. And we've often submitted questions for MPs to submit to the minister to ask. Sometimes you can get information that you wouldn't be accessible using PIA, and you can also get it quite quickly. And it's been a very effective mechanism that we've also used. Petitions are another powerful way to make sure that issues that communities are experiencing are heard in Parliament. And as I say, often my role is to just facilitate communities being involved in processes, for instance, in Parliament. Another powerful tool when we think about what are the mechanisms for environmental advocacy is the use of media and communications. And it can create awareness and it can connect disparate struggles across the country and join shared strategies. But it also requires a degree of sensitivity because obviously raising the profile of environmental activists can come with risks as well. So media is a very important part of any campaign, and it can really raise the profile of an issue and generate change. But it's important to engage with activists about what does it take to be the face of a particular campaign, and are you prepared to be that face and perhaps feel targeted as a result. So we are very cautious about when it is appropriate, and it can be very powerful. For instance, we have a case, the Deadly Air campaign. This was about the fact that the Highveld priority area didn't have regulations that were implementing air pollution controls. And part of generating the campaign around this litigation was having these powerful short videos, testimonies of activists, what it's like living next to a coal-fired power station. And it's very vulnerable. These are women talking about how sick they are or their children are, or the burden that they bear looking after people with respiratory disorders in their family. In addition to featuring activists and amplifying their voices, we've also thought about making simple, clear, understandable videos on environmental laws. It's always good for a lawyer to step back and think, okay, what are like the 5 most important concepts that we want to communicate in an animation? Is this one working? I can't see on your screen. Mine's black. It's blank. If you're interested, I can screen all of these. It's a very sweet animation which shows some of the tools in NEMA. We produce a lot of toolkits and guidelines. This is a very colorful and beautifully produced guideline on what is environmental compliance, monitoring, and enforcement. And it's always emphasized what are your remedies and what are your rights, and what are the mechanisms that we can use to demand those rights be respected. I mentioned that we are thinking constantly about what are some new tools and platforms that we can use. And I'm so proud to talk about these 2 next ones. We've traveled extensively speaking to activists, and a big challenge that we've heard is that when they report violations of environmental laws to police officers or police stations, police often aren't capacitated to know which laws have been broken, or the difficulty when their caseload is focused on violent crime or immediate action required. And so we've produced this online portal. It's called the Environmental Violations Portal. And anybody in the country can report a threatened violation of a right or an environmental law to 3 different departments. And these complaints are channeled directly to the officials responsible for compliance, monitoring, and enforcement. And it just makes sure that that channel of communication is open, and it tries to make it easy to report environmental crimes. So supporting communities affected by environmental violations with an accessible platform to report where they experience environmental laws being broken. So these are the 3 national departments: water and sanitation, mineral and petroleum resources, and environment, forestry, and fisheries. And we've also tried to provide some guidance on this platform that if the issue is not a national competency, for instance, if it's related to sanitation or the supply of water, that it will likely be channeled to municipal officials. But we regularly follow up on the status of these complaints with those officials. Another new tool that we've designed is called Ask Karabo. And we've launched our Ask Karabo digital resource, which is aimed at empowering young South Africans to get answers on environmental law and to take action against environmental injustice. So I know it looks like a chatbot, but it's actually not. It's answered. You can log in, you can create a profile, and if you have any question about environmental law, if you want to know what your rights are or what the law says about a particular issue, you can type in your question, and it'll be filtered to my colleagues and myself, and you'll get expert environmental information about what the law has to say. I think as academics and scholars, you are also information hubs, and we try that too. We have a huge library of research reports, scholarship, academic literature, and expert reports, which play a vital role in our advocacy and our litigation. And a lot of our climate change litigation is informed by scientific research, and then this is used in court papers to show why we are challenging government decisions. So we've got a very extensive library of research reports on really interesting issues. And one of those, which I think might be interesting to your work, is the Polluter Pays report. And this was produced by my colleagues in our pollution and climate change team. And it explores the potential for claiming loss and damage in South African courts as a result of damage which was caused during extreme flooding in Durban, which was exacerbated by climate change. So many people lost their lives in the flood, and there was extensive damage to infrastructure, including homes, roads, schools, and clinics, as well as ecosystems, of course. And we could use a developing science called attribution science, which can look at an extreme weather event and attribute how much climate change exacerbated the extremity of that event. And then we could quantify how much the damage actually cost to that municipality. Oh, goodness. Oh, wow. You seem very calm and relaxed about this, so I'm very glad. And actually, my power was out last night in Cape Town. I don't know if you've heard of the storms and floods and crazy winds we've had, so I also feel quite calm about this. It's familiar. So just to end off with, I'm going to talk to you about a campaign that I've been working on for about 4 years, and I sought to bring together all of those strategies, and I'm going to show you how I did it. And it's something that I'm very proud of, because even though we're still in the early phases of getting the law changed and implemented, we've seen actual change, and that's such a affirming thing. And I'm sure you all came to law school or to university to make a difference, and when you can see some of that change out in the world, it really affirms you're on the right path. So I'm going to talk to you about this mind blasting campaign. And you heard that I live in Cape Town, and being an environmental lawyer in Cape Town is a little bit unfair, because I don't actually, in my daily life, get to see what it takes to generate our power from coal. There are no power stations, there are no coal-fired power stations, we've got a nuclear one. But who here is from a mining community? Yeah? I mean, even my drive here this morning from Joburg, there were so many mines, and there were so many trucks that I saw that had big sirens on them. And that's something that is very much to do with this mine blasting campaign I'm going to talk to you about. And it's always a good reminder, and it's good to get your environmental lawyers out of Cape Town and actually experiencing what it's like to live in communities affected by mining. So this is a campaign which combined my skills as a legal researcher, technical, scientific, and academic input, the use of media, strong advocacy around law reform, and ongoing training. So these are photos from some of my clients. This is what it looks like when a mine blasts a big body of ore, often coal, to make smaller chunks. These are mine dumps where mine blasting happens day and night. And many of my clients and the communities that we work with live right next to areas affected by mine blasting. I'm not going to show you these videos, but these are clips of individual blasts, and you can hear people coughing. You can hear children being scared by the blasts, and you can see the huge plumes. It's not just dust, but it's fumes, and you can feel the chemicals in your throat after these big explosions. Oh, that one's actually working. All right. This white stuff over here is called fly rock. These are also videos that my clients have sent me, landing in their gardens, in their yards. That's what a crack looks like. That's what water looks like after blasts, full of white residue. All of these experiences, we were hearing from our community clients across the country in areas where open-cast coal mining was happening. And it wasn't an area that I was familiar with, because when we go to when we go to law school, we learn about the Constitution. I took environmental law as a subject, and not once did I ever come across the Mine Health and Safety Act. So my first step, and also because I'm such a law nerd, was to delve deeply into what does the law actually say, and how does the Mine Health and Safety Act and its regulations work. And even though I said to you earlier that I'm very proud of our legal regime, this was one area when I'd spent a long time understanding how this law works that I think really called out for law reform. Because at the end of all my research, I compared it to other jurisdictions. I looked at what rights communities had, what protections existed, and it turned out that, in fact, there were no levels of minimum blasting or maximum blasting that mines could conduct. And this left a very grey area in our law about how to protect communities and to hold mines accountable. So moving on to the second prong of attack, or the campaign, was understanding the science involved. And together with a community organization called Sukumani Environmental Justice, we installed seismographs. So these are the machines depicted in the yards here, which actually measure the ground and the air vibration. And I am not a scientist at all. It took a lot of learning for me to understand how to even read the reports and to understand exactly what it meant. And I'm not expecting you to understand this, but this was my challenge as well, that when I received these technical reports, not only did I have to understand it, but I went back and spent a lot of time in the community explaining, these are the results from April, for instance. How does it feel to know that there were 2 blasts at 3 p.m. and these exceeded limits which in the States would have violated their rights, but because we didn't have any binding standards. So it was about learning how to interpret and communicate the data and the results that we received from the scientific understanding. We also commissioned a sociologist, her name is Dr. Gwendolyn Wellman, to conduct a social impact assessment. And she conducted extensive interviews with a very wide range of stakeholders and groups in the community, from traditional leaders to nurses who work in clinics, mothers, youth, parents, all sorts of stakeholders, and asked them about how mine blasting impacts their lives. And honestly, her results were just devastating, and it wasn't a surprise for the communities because they know that their constitutional rights are being violated. But for us as lawyers to just have a report from a sociologist saying there are signs of trauma in young children, community members no longer feel at peace in their homes, community members and women in particular are worried about the safety of their children. There were quotes about nurses in clinics who said that when they were providing injections and using sharp needles, when the blasts would happen, they were very worried about how they could interact with their clients. So all of this is a clear violation of not only our environmental right, but a deep violation of our right to well-being. So this is why I think we could use all of this information to start a campaign to make a difference for the communities affected by mine blasting. So we started to speak about mine blasting as a violation of constitutional rights. And even though I was involved in drafting some of these articles, it was important that the communities whose lives are affected by blasting, that their voices, that their demands are centered. And also we were trying to emphasize the fact that it's not just a violation of a mine health and safety law, but a constitutional right. So we're elevating the profile of these complaints. I did some podcasts together with some community clients, and it was just such a good system for bringing my legal expertise, the community's experience, the scholarly social impact assessment, and then all of that technical scientific information about the data we received from the seismographs. We also engaged the department. There was a call for comments on a draft mine health and safety bill, so we submitted our own comments. And something that I'm so proud of, the bottom is probably too small for you to see, but this is communities directly emailing the DDG of the department, explaining what mine blasting is like for them and calling for law reform. And something that really made me feel very proud of our work is to see communities directly engaging with the department like that. Of course, there was lots of training and there was a lot of information sharing. This is not just online, but also in the communities themselves. And we took all of these aspects to this campaign together. And I was very proud to see in the end of 2024 that new mine blasting standards, so minimum mine blasting standards now exist. I mean, I can't take credit for it, but the timing was, let's just say, I feel like I had a hand in it, and at least we've been motivating and putting the pressure on in media, in parliament, and it was something that really called out for law reform. So now we do actually have some standards. They are still quite complex and technical, but we've got something to work with. And these new blasting standards provide certain levels that mines can't blast next to different types of structures. So if there's a national road, or if there's water wells, what do they have? Well, railways, transformers, electrical lines, and then rural buildings as well. So this means now we've got something to work with. And the next component of this campaign was to put all this information together in an interactive website, which has now also been translated into isiZulu, as well as a printed report. And when I spoke to communities who were involved in producing this, from their experience, their photos, they felt that they had been seen and heard, and they had a document to show that their voices matter and were involved in this campaign to change the law. We always try and do all of our work in a very practical way. Know your rights, know your remedies. This is how you can directly communicate through the right mechanisms if you have a grievance. Very practical. And it's not easy to speak about law in a way that makes it simple and accessible. And I've been having a whole year of trying to get these mine blasting standards translated into local languages, which I think is really essential. And we will try and do it, but of course it's better if the department does it themselves. So that's kind of like a culmination of one phase of this campaign. And the next phase is to make sure that where there are opportunities for communities to be involved in mine blasting, for instance, the law now says that mines must establish a risk committee and that you can have community representation on that committee, and they are involved in actually designing the blasts, creating awareness, making sure that communities know when a blast will happen, and if there are evacuation protocols, being involved in how to design those in a respectful, ethical way. And then, of course, we want the mines to implement these, and we have a role to play in their enforcement as well. So I've got a few slides about what my vision is about working with community clients. And I think this is not just for practicing lawyers. Perhaps you can see some involvement for academics or scholars as well when you interact with communities. And when you produce research which has an impact for communities and how you engage them with your learnings. So I think of the attorney-client relationship as participatory and power sharing. I don't want litigation or advocacy with me and my team to be disempowering. It must be empowering and capacitating. And communities and organizations must provide direction and set the agenda. Before this campaign, mine blasting was not on my list of things to do, and I think this was really an important example of where we heard these complaints from across the country and we decided to respond using all of our advocacy techniques. Recognition of the law and the work that we do as attorneys can be a site of political struggle, and it can reinforce the current power structures, and it can be often used to enforce the status quo. So just thinking about that power dynamic as well. Public interest lawyers engage with the law as a tool, reacting to injustices in the past, but then also being strategic about our future and trying to set precedent that will be meaningful in litigation going forward. You can hear how much working with communities means to me, and to be accountable to movements and communities as a lawyer, to be reliable and accountable to my clients is very important, and to also self-reflect and be critical of our own continued learning and journeys. So I think I would say our relationship with our community clients and the advocacy work that we do is built on mutual respect, I want it to be empowering. There's a deep commitment to environmental justice in our work. Trust, honesty, and integrity. And of course, the idea of lawyers and community clients walking the journey together. So some of the insights and the lessons from all of this advocacy work I've been talking about is how using the Constitution to frame experiences of environmental justice as violations of constitutional rights holds a big power. And the best way of bringing about change is to use a variety of strategies, to use the media, to use your training and teaching, scientific, academic, and technical expertise, law reform opportunities, and then, of course, litigation to work towards a solution. And our litigation is always accompanied by an advocacy campaign, and those two should mutually support and strengthen each other. And I hope I've explained to you that the best approach is to combine all of these in quite a creative and flexible way. And I was also thinking about the work that you do and thinking there's an enormous role that you already know and are doing amazing work in local government's role for climate and environmental justice. There's some really exciting provisions of the Climate Change Act that I'm desperate to know how they're going to play out, and I'm desperate to see how scientists and academics and all the researchers can support the work. For instance, the climate change forums and the needs and response assessments and implementation plans. But I would say that our Constitution, it allows us to be ambitious and to dream big about the change that we want to see in our society. And NEMA and our environmental laws provide that imperative. It's our duty to do it. And I think our laws have so many interesting mechanisms and tools beyond going to court. And I think your role as academics and researchers and scholars really plays an important part. And I know I'm just starting my academic journey, not quite yet Dr. Midgley, but I'm so excited to see this beautiful interplay between scholarship and legal advocacy in the pursuit of environmental justice. So I think that's my last slide.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to answer questions and talk about any of the cases, and all of that information is on the Centre for Environmental Rights website. And I'm very happy to provide, if you want to know the violations portal or the Ask Karabo, I'm very happy to share all of those links. And I'm very approachable and less nervous talking one-on-one, so please do come and chat to me over coffee or drinks.
Whoops. Looks like we're not going to have two microphones like I thought. Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Midgley, for that presentation. I think it really opened the eyes of all our young academics and prospective lawyers to the nuts and bolts of being an environmental lawyer. So I'm going to open the floor for some Q&A now. I will let the mic travel. You can raise your hand if you have any questions.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. So in your presentation, you spoke a lot about mining, but here my issue is waste management, right, in terms of advocacy. Because we started a mini movement back at home. There's a township in the north of Pretoria called Haraku. That's where I stay. So we started a mini movement where we started cleaning local parks and all of those things because people pollute them. But to my surprise, when I go back home, I still find waste. So it means our efforts are not recognized. So I want to ask you, how do we actually start a solid movement that will get into the consciousness of our own people to not waste, to not eat away we cleaned already? Because we are young people and we're using all our energy to get into those things. And my second question is about illegal mining, especially in the Rustenburg areas. Have you started, or are you going to start your advocacy there, and when are you going to start? And also, when you start and when you publish your research, please share it with the environmental law group in Northwest University. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Midgley. So my question is a two-part question. So the first one is that I think we've all seen from undergrad up until postgrad, even postdoc, that taking subjects such as legal philosophy and interpretation. Legal philosophy takes a lot of time to develop and become very qualified in the South African aspect. So I just want to know from your perspective, how do you think that's going? Are we moving in the correct direction? Because I think one thing that our country is very good with is the theory part, but the implementation parts, yeah, it becomes a problem there. And then the second part of my question is that also from the CER's perspective, how do you think we are in South Africa, rather? How do you think we are doing regarding reducing our vulnerability and increasing our resiliency, which is basically climate change adaptation?
Thank you so much for those questions. Your waste advocacy question is so relevant and so pertinent. It's something that we hear a lot. And my whole presentation was about what advocacy tools do we have. So I love this question because it's exactly how can we make a campaign? Are any of these strategies, would they be useful? Is this an area where you think it would be good to have a lawyer understand what does the bylaw actually say? What are the duties on the municipality? And what are the obligations of the communities? For instance, there's a legal duty to provide a skip or to collect waste that is full. But there's also an obligation on everybody not to litter. So first of all, let's understand the legal remedies and the rights. But that's just one of many, many of these strategies I've been talking about. Maybe we need to use media. Maybe we need to make sure people actually are aware in the media of what does littering do to water, sanitation, or what does it do to contaminated land? Or what is it like living in an environment where you see a lot of litter around you? So maybe this is an opportunity where you can contact the local radio and give an interview with your organization. And it's something that you could caucus and strategize before. What's the best way of building a movement around this? How can we get youth involved? Can we get school kids involved? There might even be an opportunity for employment in waste collection. Some of the alumni from the Rights and Remedies School have gone on to create waste picking job creation projects and recycling projects. So I think before going to court, there's so many of these tools exactly on this kind of issue. Waste is a huge issue and it violates constitutional rights. It's not nice to live in an environment that's polluted and full of rubbish, but it's also, there are municipal obligations to provide waste collection services. So let's understand the law. Let's create a campaign. Let's build a movement. Let's do that by using the media. Local radio is a very powerful medium, but maybe even online, maybe in a local newspaper. It can be quite an exciting way of thinking about, let's use art. Let's have a mural depicting what this site looks like after you've done an amazing job cleaning it, compared to when you come home and you see it's been littered again. And maybe there is an opportunity for meeting with the municipal officials and to sit down and say, let's make a plan about what is the process for when waste is actually collected from this area. To be bold enough and to have the confidence to say we have a right to a clean environment, and when you engage with an authority, to demand it, because you do have a right. So I think any of these strategies might be involved in waste collection, and it just takes an active citizen, like it sounds like you've already been on the path of making that difference, and to try and now make it into a bigger campaign and generate some more advocacy around it. Yeah. Legal philosophy, wow, I wasn't expecting that question, but I'm a law nerd, so I actually love jurisprudence, I love legal philosophy, and I had everybody in my family tuning into the Pala Pala judgment because that's the kind of like, oh my God, look at this amazing display of accountability mechanisms between all three arms of government. Here we've got Parliament, here we've got the judiciary holding Parliament to account where they failed to do so, to the executive. You know, I'm just obsessed at the vibrancy of our democracy, but it is exhausting because there's so much going on all the time. I still think from a purely a legal perspective, we do have good laws. We have a really good constitution. We have certainly a problem with the implementation, and we have a deep culture of non-compliance from corporates in particular. I still think it's worth being proud of our legal philosophy, though, and I know that I'm a climate justice scholar, and I'm feeling like there's so much traction from global scholars looking to the global south and wanting to know and learn about how do we approach the rule of law and how do we use constitutional rights in our litigation. So we've got a lot to be proud of. I think we're still developing our legal philosophy. Like, you can hear me talking about well-being. It's an area of environmental law that I think we can still develop. There's so much scope for that. But I think we are moving in the right direction from the philosophical side. There's definitely an issue with the implementation, because we all know when we look around, there's a lot of environmental pollution and degradation, a lot of environmental injustice. And that's where I feel called to do this work. And I hope some of you will also contribute in that sense. Okay, your question about the vulnerability and adaptation is great. It's actually something I've been thinking a lot about in my chapter 2 of my research, because quite a lot of our litigation has been focused on mitigation. So we are very much focused on trying to prevent new coal-fired power plants, new mines, whereas I think South Africa is responsible for less than 3% of historical emissions. We are a small player in the history of global greenhouse gas emissions. And we have an abundance of coal. We do play a very important role in Africa. I think we're the 15th biggest emitter currently. And I believe Sasol's Secunda operations are the single biggest greenhouse gas point source emitter in the world. So it is very important that we still try and focus on the mitigation. But I like your question about vulnerability and adaptation, because if the world warms by 2 degrees, we'll warm by 3 or 4 degrees. And we are extremely vulnerable, and we've been shown that through so many of those extreme weather events that we've experienced. So so we have the New Climate Change Act, and it's being phased in, it's being implemented in a phased approach. And quite a few of the provisions which require significant behavioral change haven't come into force yet. So we don't have the sector emission trajectories yet. And those are really going to affect how much we emit on the mitigation side. And one provision that is in force at the moment is to do with the alignment of all policies at a municipal, provincial, and a national level with climate change, vulnerability, and adaptation requirements. So it's something that we're still working on. We're still extremely vulnerable, but at least the law is coming into force. And soon those vulnerability needs and risks assessments will be due. And we should all be involved in those, in contributing to making sure that at a municipal level, we know what the vulnerability needs are, and that our policies are aligned to make us less vulnerable. Yeah. Very long-winded, sorry, but legal philosophy.
Hi, Ms Midgley, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I think your passion for community work is actually quite infectious. So I just would have 2 questions. So the Centre of Environmental Rights, clearly there is legal support and volunteers, but is it also a multidisciplinary, I want to say, organization? Because I think specifically community psychologists can really help in the communities that you guys are working in. And then also my other question is, I quickly Googled and then I saw the rights and remedies training that you have. The application is already closed for this year on Monday. So I just wanted to know, are there any other volunteering or training opportunities for this year? That's everything from me. Thank you.
Love it. Wow.
Hi, thank you for your talk today. You mentioned the Sasol Secunda on. I just had a question about corporate accountability and whether, it's a quick question, but whether you think the growth of corporates and the old argument of corporations bringing economic growth and job creation, do you think that the growth of corporates in that sense and environmental justice is reconcilable? In the sense that they can coexist and we can have environmental justice while corporations continue to grow? Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel, for the very interesting presentation. That has also did it also on some of the successes that you've recorded as an institution. I know that you've been making gains, some of them big, some of them small. My question is, holistically, do you think we can never get to a point where we can say as a society we've been able to achieve environmental justice? And if we can get to that point, when do you think the foreseeable future that is going to happen? If that is not going to happen, what do you think are the impediments? And basically, that question is linked to the one that has been posed by a gentleman. Thanks.
So I think we have sustainable development is in our constitution, and that requires a balancing of the social, economic, and environmental impacts of business. It's not just a fluffy nice to have, it's a legal requirement. And we often find in applications for environmental authorization, because of all the social challenges, the unemployment, it's often the economic and economic aspect is prioritized over the social and environment. And there are powerful actors who promote the economic side, and as they should, but we hope to be a bulwark to talk about the other side, to advocate for the other side. So I think it does sound a bit trying to say that sustainable development is how we reconcile economic growth. But to be honest, I haven't encountered a sustainable mine yet. I've seen some examples of good practice, but I think with our history and our legacy of structural colonialism and racism and apartheid, I haven't seen a mine that is actually currently operating in a sustainable, in an ecologically sustainable manner. And I love the fact that our constitution even says ecologically sustainable, because that even has a stronger emphasis on the environmental aspect. It is possible. I think it is possible. Yeah. Were you asking me, is environmental justice possible, Professor?
Is it possible for us to holistically say we've gotten to the point where we've achieved environmental justice in South Africa and take into consideration the context within which we operate? That may require that towns that are located close to mines are completely relocated, or probably the mines are relocated, and many of the other tensions that have to come into play in terms of the balancing of the various legs, the different legs of sustainable development.
I would just love to think about what my job would be if environmental justice existed already. I think it would be looking into the environmental justice that might apply to other species. We could start thinking about the ecosystems. We could start thinking about how our activities on marine and coastal environments. And I think it is. Why would I be in this job? Why would I dedicate my career and my passion to working towards a goal? It's lofty and it's ambitious, but I think we all feel how meaningful it is. We all come from environments, we all are members of community, all of our health is impacted by air pollution and water quality. So I think no matter what environment we live in, we all want to feel environmental justice as well. Yeah, I think it's a very open-ended question, and we can talk more about environmental justice. Yeah, I think it gives us a goal that even if we don't achieve it, the gains that we make on that journey are still meaningful.
That's perfect. It's an ideal. We strive for it.
I agree, and the law of our constitution is an ideal. Yeah, we are not multidisciplinary in that we are a law clinic, so we hire lawyers, but we very much recognize the value of experts in so many different fields. And in fact, we had a very powerful expert report on the psychological and mental health impacts of climate change on South African youth. And this was an expert affidavit that we used very strongly in our litigation, trying to get stronger air pollution regulations implemented. So sometimes the way that we work in an interdisciplinary manner is that we will commission research. For instance, I've worked closely with a sociologist doing a social impact assessment. But it's a beautiful idea. I mean, wouldn't it be great to have a hub of all sorts of experts in different fields all working on their aspect of environmental justice? Are you from a psychology background?
Yeah, so I did my BA in women's psychology and I'm doing my honors in psychology and I want to do my LLB.
Amazing, amazing. It's, you know, you've heard me talk about well-being. I think there's so much scope for people with your expertise to provide some meaning about, it's not just respiratory disorders, it's not the health, it's how we feel about our society and our place and our connection to land and culture and spirituality. And if our constitution guarantees well-being, psychologists must be involved in working towards that solution. But at CR, we are a law clinic. Unfortunately, it's lawyers for now. You asked another one about the other opportunities for training. You know what, just get in touch with us. Just email me directly, we'll see what we can do. And even though I live in Cape Town, we actually travel a lot. And we've got some really incredible activist partners who work and who live in Northwest. So it's not that far to come here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am, and thank you so much for your really informative talk. Like, I learned a lot. My question to you is that when you were answering his question, you spoke about approaching like radio stations and municipalities. So I want to ask like exactly how would you go about that? Because like I have an idea, but how exactly would you execute that? And then I also wanted to ask, how has it been like? Do you guys face any pushbacks when you campaign and you go to communities and when you do legal reform? Like, what is the pushbacks that you guys have faced and how exactly do you like go about facing that pushback in order to like reach your goal?
Thank you. Hi. So my question is actually not a question, just more like a concern regarding the case that you mentioned you worked on after the mine blast. Is it Eastern Cape or is it in the West?
Oh, Marikana.
In Marikana. Okay, so I just wanted to like ask. So the people who stay in areas that are surrounded by mines, are those formal settlements or are they informal settlements? And if it's informal settlements, what has been done to at least propose or try and convince them to move away? And has there been any sort of like hesitance behavior from the community members in the sense that maybe they don't want to move or relocate to like a more secure area where they won't be affected by the activities taking place in the mine? And also, I believe that before people can be placed in a specific landscape, geographical surveys are done to determine if that area is safe for building and so on. So are these areas that have actually passed those kind of requirements? Has the municipality done anything to ensure that people will be safe to stay there? And if not, what has been done to make sure that the municipality is following up on such safety measures and safety requirements to make sure that people are building houses in areas that are actually safe? I mean, obviously staying in a place that's surrounded by mines is not an ideal way of living. So yeah, I just wanted to know like, what has been done actually to make sure that the community are playing a role to ensure their own safety, and that the municipality is also playing their role to make sure that their duties are actually fulfilled in making sure that people are safe and they have all the resources that they need. Yeah.
Hi, ma'am. Question, right? This is two basic questions, but I thought kind of yeah. So the first question is, it goes back to what you said, speaking about settlements alongside mines, right? we know of things of buffer zones or industrial areas, right? So do you guys advocate for mines that are also being affected by population that has relocated to places where they've created their industries, right? Number one, right? Number two, we also going back to the act that you quoted, the National Environmental Act, Section 24C, right? It speaks about the importance of environmental justice to address injustices, right? Do you then also advocate for people who stay in estates? For example, if I stay in an estate in Alberton and then they becomes, all of a sudden, I see shacks next door. Like, shacks began to develop, because then that creates an injustice for me as a taxpayer. One, because I'm going to pay more rates. Number two is because the area that I'm staying in is going to become populated more than it's supposed to be. Thirdly, there's going to be littering, and then there's going to be pollution of air, right? Because, you know, when you generate a shack next to a house, that's pollution on its own. We won't, as bad. I won't become inconsiderate of people's way of living. But do you advocate for such people as an advocate for environmental justice, right? And then the other question goes to, for example, the Marikana case. Do you think it was just for the people to go against the mines? Because looking at it, the mine has been there more than the people have. Don't you think it was just for the mine to continue with the way it has been doing things? Only people had to then say, we were supposed to move. We look at the things that are happening in Rustenburg currently. Don't you think it's people that then move to areas that are not supposed to be moved, that they're not supposed to move to, that then creates the problem of environmental injustice? And lastly, going to speak about our very own institution, right? Do you think it is environmentally unjust, right, to build on land that has been made for animals? Looking at the Bar campus, it's built in a nature reserve, right? Where animals are being. Don't you think already we have created an imbalance? Because as an advocate for justice, we advocate for evergreen. Now that the institution is progressing, don't you think we are then violating human rights by decreasing the nature that is there in society? Thank you.
I like these questions, great questions. And you guys have got time, I'm amazed. You're still here, it's 10 to 4. Love you guys. Okay, so we have a question about what pushback we've received, and I mentioned the defamation suit, which we had to defend. So that's a very formalized legal form of pushback, where the mine basically wanted to stop us objecting and speaking about the impacts of the mine in public and academic circumstances. But there are many other threats that activists face, and I consider myself an activist as well, even though I'm not at the actual fence line of the mine. But I have had the very unfortunate circumstance of at least 2 or 3 of our clients and community partners being assassinated because of their activism. So we have a big campaign called Defend the Defenders, and this is about strengthening systems to support environmental rights defenders, because they are often seen as the target and the figurehead for a project not going ahead, for instance, a mine expanding or being granted an authorization. So that's why we're very sensitive about profiling activists, because what comes with raising their profile in the media can be an absolute deadly threat in South Africa. It is so dangerous to have your voice heard when you are opposing development. And we're thinking of all sorts of strategies that we can try and support environmental rights defenders, whether it's urgent legal assistance, if it's to do with bail, or if it's you need to disappear, you need to be relocated, you need to go into hiding. We are developing a lot of support systems for environmental rights defenders. And these advocacy strategies are also being used in the environmental defenders sector. So we're also thinking of having a specific law about environmental defenders and what protections should be offered towards them. NEMA actually has protections for environmental whistleblowers, but that's often more in a labour context. But there are significant threats, and it takes a lot of courage to stand up against big business and corporations which want to continue with unsustainable developments. So there's certainly pushback. In terms of the question about how do you actually go about the local radio, I mean, do you listen to radio? If you listen to radio, give them a call. Some of being a lawyer is just being curious and innovative and just trying things out. Sometimes they don't work, sometimes they're incredible, and it's a matter of picking up the phone or sending an email and asking, do you have a slot where we discuss community issues? Do you have a slot where my community and my organization can speak about the work we're doing in our waste collection? Or let's organize to get one of the professors to come and speak about a project they're working on local radio. There's so many interesting platforms that maybe you're not exposed to, but actually are really powerful in South Africa, and I've really been emphasizing local radio recently as a very important tool for spreading awareness and generating excitement and movement building. I don't know the particular radio stations here, but I would just say give it a go. Do some Googling, find out who the station, the programming, and find a slot that would work. And then organize with your team about who's the right person to come and give an interview. And you don't have to be an expert, you just have to care a lot. And that's what people want to hear. This person cares, and that'll make them care as well. Okay, there were some questions about mine relocation. And I must say, even though I spoke about the mine blasting campaign, it hasn't actually been a case, so we're not litigating. It's just been a combination of all these advocacy strategies that we've used to try and generate some new laws. But we are very concerned about mine relocation, and there is a policy of the National Department, which is about involuntary mine relocation. And it's a very complex situation because it's not always that the communities have moved in since the mine was constructed. So with the communities I work with, many predate the mine. And in fact, their land tenure is extremely insecure because the mine has relocated them several times. And instead of building proper houses for them, they've built temporary shelters with no connection to water and sanitation, and it's led to continued violation of their constitutional rights, which is why they came to us and said, what can we do about the situation? But it's not always that communities, that the mine predates the communities. I actually would like to ask you as local governance experts about the role of the municipality, because you can hear most of my work has actually been engaging at a national level. The municipality is involved in some of these the committees which assess the risk that blasting poses to communities. So, for instance, they would be part of the surveys to say these houses are constructed of these materials, and therefore these blast limits shouldn't be exceeded. But I actually would love to ask if there are some experts here who know what the local government's role is with mine relocation of housing. It's not an area that I've investigated. And to your question about do we represent estates? No, we don't. We found that generally our clients approach law clinics because they don't have funds to approach attorneys, and people who live in estates and in a more privileged environment would be able to hire attorneys, and they could think about their best strategy. So it's not been a focus of ours.
Right, so for the sake of time, I'm going to have to stop the questions. You're welcome to approach Ms Midgley when we are having our drinks outside. So yeah, that would then be the end of this year's Prestige Lecture. We'd just like to say thank you to Ms Midgley for coming all the way from Cape Town. Do you have any final words, any quick last remark?
Thank you very much for this invite. It really was an opportunity for me to also reflect on 7 years with CR and to think about what are the tools that I can share, because I want everybody to be excited about environmental law and environmental justice, and I want everybody to think they've got a role to play, And whether it's producing research or theses, or actually just going back to your own community and thinking, is there a difference that you would like to make in your own environment? I hope that my enthusiasm and my curiosity and my desire to just share what I've learned as being successful techniques might be useful for you as well. Thank you. Thank you.